Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is going to be, I think, a repair video, assuming I can get it open, of this Logitech Squeezebox radio that I've had, well, since it was new. This doesn't balance very well here. Let me show you, let me turn it on and see if we can see the behavior. There we go. And I'll talk a little bit about this as I start to get this going. So this is a sort of first or second generation web radio, and maybe the third generation of the Squeezebox kind of products. They require a server being run on a PC on your network. As you can see, it still works and sounds fine. Actually, this is a very good sounding little radio. It says free your music. I don't know if that's visible at all on video. But let's just get to the volume here, because this works fine, but see what I'm doing? I'm turning it to the right and it's skipping. This is not a volume knob. It's got a mute in the center of it, and that's not working very well either. And once you use it for a while, it starts working better. So this is a rotary encoder, as is this one. And I think this rotary encoder could use a squirt of the old contact cleaner. I think that's going to be probably a good fix for that. So time to open this up and have a look. Now I did start to have a look at how to open this before, so let's unplug it. And I'll talk a little bit as I go, as I said. And the first thing we're going to need to do is, find a screwdriver for that, is take out the battery pack that's inside it. I have the battery pack and the remote control for this. I didn't buy them initially when I bought it, but I did acquire them over time. So there's the battery pack. This is an off-brand one, but this battery pack has held up extraordinarily well. It's, 6 or 7 years old, still works fine. So you'll see there's nothing inside there. Well, you might not see because this is black shiny plastic, which is, of course, but there's nothing in there but the plug for the battery pack. Okay, so with the battery pack removed, there's nothing obvious to take off here. We can take off the knobs, and we can see that they're soldered directly onto the circuit board right here. You might be able to get at that well enough to squirt it from here, but let's see if we can take it apart a little bit so we have the opportunity to look inside. Now, one with the little rubber. These are the little rubber things that it snaps into. One there, and one. Yeah. So over here, and over here. Two closer together. And those are screw holes, I believe, down in there. I think if you take these screws out, this cover plate should come off, which might be sufficient to get us in. So let's have a look at that. But they are not Phillips screws. And so here we might be onto the what are they territory. Well, they'll fit with Torx, so we'll try a little Torx bit on these. There's one. There's two. Let's see if we can, are there some clips here that we could release? Doesn't feel like it. Oh wait, something happened here. I'm wondering Don't want to scratch this up too badly. There we go. There's a clip there. I think. No. That was it. Okay. So look at that. There we have it. And there we go. So we have a box with the speakers here, a little separate fabric dome tweeter of some sort, a little tiny like 2.5-inch woofer there. We have this power which goes to, I'm guessing, the speakers there. There's a fair amount of weight in this still. I would imagine the magnet on that's pretty big. And here's the board. So we've got, let me zoom down a little bit. I'm going to apologize for being a bit sniffy today. It appears that allergy season is go for me today. So we've got a Samsung chip. I wonder if that's memory. Probably. We've got, there's another Samsung chip and processor. This has the Ethernet on it. And that's got to be the Wi-Fi chip there. I don't know if you can see any of it here. I'll try to zoom in a little bit more. So I'm thinking that's the Wi-Fi chip. That's probably the antenna. There's a crystal. That would be. There's another crystal. I'm getting. This is the processor. CT80. I think it's. This thing actually runs a Linux on it. A small version of Linux. So it does actually have a full processor and memory. That, as I said, that looks like memory to me. I have no idea what that is. There's got to be a sound chip in here somewhere. And an amplifier, right? I don't really want to take this. Oh, we're going to have to take it off the back. Okay, so let's take lots of screws out. There's the headphone jack. That's audio in or out depending. It's a Texas Instrument chip of some sort. Let's see what's on the other side. Ton of screws. So what I've done is I've taken off some of the screws all the way around. I note that there are two clips here. Yeah, it seems to be wiggling free. So the question is how to get that screw out there. And this does look like it unplugs, but I think my likelihood of getting this off, even assuming I'm correct about that, is not very good. So what I'm going to try is I'm going to try using a smaller screwdriver and coming in at an angle. Sometimes, no, I'm just chewing it up. Let's try one size larger. And there we go. So sometimes if you use one size down on a screwdriver, you can get that to work. It's still, there's another one here. So the solutions to holding this in place was to use all its screws. All right, there we go. See if we can get it to stick back on. So that's it. So we have the screen, the buttons on the side of the screen over here, and two rotary encoders. This is presumably, I'll zoom in a little bit. This is presumably the sensor for the remote control. You can see some 3-pin holes. I wonder if that's the amplifier chip there. Yeah, and that's it. Although I suspect that this is much higher part count than you would have with something like this now. Okay, so what we're going to do is just give both of them a good squirt with contact cleaner. Now I should say this is the zero residue kind. This is my preference. It will not lubricate anything, but the problem with these is there really isn't any way to get into them, so I'm just hoping it goes down the shaft here if I glop a bunch onto it. Now we'll just wiggle those around a little bit. And hopefully that will get it down into the rotary encoder. We'll let that dry off for a moment. It's almost dry anyway. And I wish I'd opened the window before I'd started that, as I always do when I use that stuff. But seems all right. The clips here are for the LCD, so good thing that I didn't poke too hard at those. All right, so here we are. Let's just have a quick look at the buttons. Make sure they're all the right way up. Here, can you see? Yeah, the right way up. Now it's just a question of putting all those screws back in and putting it back together and seeing what we've got. So I will start to put screws in. I will record this, but I'm fairly sure I won't show it all to you. Yeah, I think if I had to do that again, I wouldn't even take it apart. I'd just spray it in through the knobs. There was no real need to take the whole thing apart. Except, of course, I wanted to see in it, so there we go. This also has a light sensor, which I think is in that corner, but I didn't actually see it. I wasn't looking for it. The light sensor adjusts the brightness of the display, which is, of course, pretty important for something you have in your bedroom. I shall say that the reason why I don't use this is because it's really been replaced by a combination of Bluetooth and, mainly AirPlay, really, in my house. So there's not really much reason to keep a Squeezebox server running except for this radio. And I don't actually have a PC I keep on all the time anymore. So the various versions, there's an open source project around Squeezebox server which has kept it alive, despite Logitech really not doing much with it for a long time. And so it's still a completely workable platform. It'll send FLACs around your network. It's a pretty decent system. And you can use a variety of things as hardware for it. So it'll run on Android and, you know, any small PCs you have kicking around, which might not be used for anything. But the problem is, unless you have a digital out, you're dependent on whatever DA converter is in your device. This is irritating. For the audio quality. So, you know, your average DA converter in an older Android phone is not necessarily that hot. And it certainly doesn't have a line level built into it. So it's a little not ideal. And of course, now there are many other systems. For those of us who are mostly Apple stuff, the obvious choice is AirPlay 2, I guess. And there is a server edition that update that supports AirPlay, and one that supports AirPlay 2, but I've got to say I never got that working properly. Although for just streaming music, there's not much to distinguish between the two, certainly for a radio use case. I mean, I don't think I ever sent flax to this thing anyway, because there's not really much point. I was looking for some tweezers or forceps, but these are what I found. I'll try to get this one into place here. These have picked up a little bit of magnetic. Oh, that might work. Once you get it started, it'll go right in. There we go. Okay, so we have it back together. I'm going to put the knobs back on. I will say the one reason why I might not spray this in place is because this is printed on the back, and I would not trust contact cleaner to not take the printing off of it. So I think taking this apart is in fact a necessary part of this repair, if repair it is. So I think this is the power board. Well, there's a transformer probably for bringing up to the 12 volts on here, and maybe the power's going down. Those look like capacitors maybe. There's the one that holds the clock. That looks right. There we go. Okay. So then this should go underneath here, and we just have two screws here to put in place. Right. These need this Torx bed. So really it's pretty easy to take apart. The speaker unit is sealed, it appears to be, and looks like there are 4 screws that would possibly take this front plate out. I don't know. I think one of the reasons why it sounds pretty good, at least to me, is that it isn't ported. It obviously doesn't have much bass, but the bass it has doesn't have the weird peaks that you get with small ported speakers. All right, so let's have some power here. It's powering up. That's a good sign. That feels the same. So yeah, it's got a rotary encoder here and a rotary encoder here. Power switch works. Button's facing the right direction. This thing really is a fingerprint magnet. Look at that. Fixed. So if you want to fix a skipping rotary encoder on your Squeezebox radio, well, it's actually not at all hard to take apart. You just have to get the speaker grill off, which would come off with one of these or a very fine screwdriver, I suppose. And yeah, that's all there is to it. We know the audio works. There's no, you could set it to go, like if you went to radio, it won't connect to my server. But it did manage to connect to, Logitech still has a server up and running online, so you can now, so it is in fact working. All right, you can play, you know. Anyway, so yeah, so it works now as an IP radio just fine. It just doesn't have access to my online music, which isn't. The question then, of course, is how many other devices with rotary encoders that get jumpy like that could be fixed with a simple addition of contact cleaner. My suspicion is most of them. It's that this is not an unusual problem. And I would be certainly willing to try to take anything apart that is easy enough to take apart to get it an encoder like that. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoy my little videos about this sort of small electronic stuff, please subscribe. I try to put something up about once a week.